In the previous videos we have constructed a search strategy for our topic. That does not mean we are finished. We have to evaluate the search and, if necessary, adapt it so that it matches our expectations. Your search should not contain errors. But how do you know an error occurred? In most cases you won't notice. Sometimes you are alarmed by an exceptionally low or high number of results, but often you do not know how many references to expect. Therefore, we advise you to first check your search for the most frequently made mistakes: forgetting an or between two synonyms, missing field codes, and a misplacement of parentheses. Let's take for example this search strategy. If you search this in PubMed, you will get 40,000 references, which is way too many for your question. The results are also not very relevant. So you think that there might be an error in the search. One of the reasons that could cause an error is added parentheses. It's therefore important to check each element for correct parentheses. Copy and paste each element one at a time in PubMed to check if there are added parentheses. If you see an error like this, the following term was ignored, opening parentheses, then you get a notification there is an extra parenthesis here. You can check the parentheses in your Word document using Ctrl F and then find to search for opening parentheses. These are highlighted. Some of them are preceded by an and, but this one is preceded by an or. So this is an extra parenthesis. Let's check the search again in PubMed if the parentheses are now correct. But you see there's also a closing parenthesis extra. So again, you can go to Word, search for all closing parentheses, they are highlighted, and see that this one is followed by an or, so there's an extra closing parenthesis here. If you paste this in PubMed, you will see there is no error messages about parentheses anymore. The results, however, are hardly satisfactory because now you get 0 results. One of the reasons that you get 0 or much fewer results is you might have forgot an or. An or is replaced by an and in the database. To check for forgotten ors, go to Advanced Search, scroll down to your search history, open the search details, and in this page, press Ctrl F to search for space and space. You will see the terms that you typed in. You see 3 ends highlighted. And this is what PubMed created out of that. And you see 4 highlights. Here's an end between periodontitis and pregnancy. That's correct. But this one is between gestation and gravidity, which is probably not intentional. Gestation and gravidity, indeed, there should be an or here. Another frequently made mistake is forgetting field codes. If you search for all fields, there should not be any reference for all fields. However, here there is all fields after prevent. So apparently we forgot to add title abstract after prevent. Now if we paste this into PubMed, we know that we have a search without errors. So we searched each element separately to find errors in parentheses, and in Advanced Search we search with Ctrl F for space, and we search for all fields. Now you ask yourself the question, did I find too many references? Did I find too few references? Finding too few references is often the case. You should always consider, did we find all references that are relevant? A very relevant question. There are two types of searches, generally speaking. There are specific searches in which your goal is to find almost only relevant references. The number of references that you want to find is low, and the number of relevant references in your search should be high. 1 in 2 references could be relevant. The chance in that case that you missed relevant references is high. This is called a very specific search. For instance, you can find those for clinical questions. On the other side of the spectrum, there's very sensitive searches. When you are doing research such as a systematic review, your goal is to find as many relevant articles as possible. And that means that the number of hits can be much higher. The number of relevant references in your result can be much lower, maybe only 1 in 20 references is relevant, but the chances that you've missed relevant articles are much lower. You should always ask yourself the question, did I find all relevant references? Especially if the number of references is low and the percentage of noise is low as well. Chances are high that you've missed relevant articles. Always evaluate your search and see if you can find more relevant references. Let's look at a search strategy. I have made a search strategy that's a bit more specific than we did before: broccoli and colorectal cancer prevention. If you paste this into PubMed, you'll find 54 articles. That is not that many. And you ask yourself the question, did we find everything there is? A good way to start with that is to check the articles that you found for relevant terms that you haven't searched. Such as in the first one, we see colon cancer, it's not highlighted. We see the term risk, that's not highlighted. And we see a new term, cruciferous vegetables, such as kale, cabbage, and broccoli sprouts. That's relevant as well. We can add these terms to our search strategy to see if this finds more relevant articles. Make sure that you add it to the correct elements. We have now found 151 results. I see there was an error here. Another way to increase the number of references is to broaden one of your elements, maybe generalize one of your elements. We chose in this element to specifically search for colorectal neoplasm. Might it be relevant to search for all neoplasms? This severely increases the number of references. You can also broaden the search by adding study types, not in an AND relationship, but with an OR relationship. The prevention of cancer by broccoli can probably be found in cohort studies for broccoli and cancer. Let's see if we can find a mesh term for cohort studies. There's a mesh term cohort studies. Let's copy that mesh term and paste it in our element of preventive medicine. And also don't forget to add the term cohort in title abstract. Now we have broadened our search. Probably we will not have missed relevant references. We have seen several options what you can do if you found too few results. If you found too many results, some of the options are exactly the opposite of what we did when we found too few results. There are, however, some extra options that you can use if you found too many results to reduce the number of references. Let's look again at our search strategy. The search strategy now has 1200 references. That might be a bit too many. Contrary to what we did the last time when we added reference types, study types, with an OR, this increases the number of references. You could also choose to add study types with an AND to decrease the number of references. If you want to limit your search to study types, we recommend that you do not use the filters on the left side of the screen. The filters here on the left side of the screen, especially those for article type, are severely limiting your results so that they only include articles that have mesh terms. You will miss the most recent articles. If you want to include a filter for study type, we recommend that you search the study type as if it were a normal mesh term, such as we did with the cohort studies. Another way of limiting your references might be to use the no explode option in PubMed. A search for the mesh term neoplasms will find all articles with mesh terms found below neoplasms in the tree. It will find all cysts, hamartoma, all of these specific neoplasms. If you do not want to find that, you can use the option mesh : no X. No X means no explode, and you will only find articles that have the mesh term neoplasms and not the terms below the term in the tree. If you're not doing a systematic review or not a very exhaustive search, where you do not want to find everything there is but only the most important articles, a good way of limiting your search is using major mesh terms with the field code MAJR or MJ, and to combine that with TI instead of title abstract. In general, there are about 20 mesh terms assigned to each article, and 5 of those mesh terms are considered the major mesh terms. If you search for MAJR or MJ, you will find only those articles where broccoli is one of the major components of this article. If you are not doing a systematic review, then you can use the filters on the left side of PubMed to filter for date or for language. There's also an option to use the term not in your search. However, watch out with the use of not. There are several safe ways of using not, and one of the ways is that you can use not to not out a very specific element. If you do not want to find articles about cancer therapy, you can use not neoplasm/therapy as a major mesh term or cancer therapy in the title. If you're not out, don't be very specific, but don't be very sensitive in your element, but be very specific. You could also use not to not out a very specific term. If you're interested in hearing problems in HIV and AIDS, and you'll find lots of noise with hearing aids, you could say, or aids, not hearing aids, within parentheses, to only limit the aids that is not found as hearing aids. Or a safe way is to use a double not. If you're interested in articles about humans, you could find these by searching for not between parentheses animals, not humans. This is best explained with a graph. In a set of articles in PubMed, several articles have the mesh term animals, several articles have the mesh term humans, and a set of articles does not have mesh terms at all. If you're interested in articles about humans, then you do not want to find only those articles that have already been indexed with the mesh term humans, but you might want to find articles that have not been indexed yet. The only articles that you do not want to find are articles that have been indexed with the mesh term animals, but not the mesh term humans. Hence the construction not between parentheses animals, not humans. And this is something that can be done in other occasions as well. If you're interested in articles about adults might not have the mesh term adults attached to it. But if you search for not child, not adult, you might find the relevant articles. And this is not only limited to searching in mesh terms, but you can also use this to search in title abstract. If you're interested in articles about the right ventricle, but you get lots of noise by finding articles on left ventricle, you can say not left ventricle, not right ventricle. Another safe way to use not is to compare search strategies. If you have two different search strategies that you want to compare, in PubMed you can go to Advanced Search and see your search history. If you want to see whether this search finds relevant articles that this search has missed, what you can do is use the actions Add Query and then Add with Not. What you will find now is you will find articles that have been found with the first search and not with the latter search.